Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's corporate community and corporate overview and scrutiny. Just before we start, a bit of housekeeping. Can we please ensure that all mobile devices, Alexas, Google Boxes, mobile phones, etc., are switched off or on silent mode? If you're not speaking or being asked to speak, please mute your microphones. If you don't mute your mic, it will be muted for you. And to assist with people viewing the meeting, could everyone turn off their cameras and only turn them on when speaking? And this evening we have currently got, I'm just going to go down the order of my screen as I see them. We have myself, Councillor Guy Grandison as the chair. We've got Councillor Abdul Loys. We've got Officer Callum Wareham. We've got Councillor Clive Jones. We've got Councillor Graham Howe. We've got Officer Keely Clements. We've got Officer Mark Redvan. We've got Officer Neil Carr. We've got Officer Nigel Bailey. Got Councillor Parry Bath, Councillor Paul Fishwick, Mr. Ramek's sound. I'm sorry, I can't. I'm reading it. I can't. My brain's not going together. And Councillor Shirley Boyd. Have I missed anyone there?
I don't believe so.
No. Well, I did have Keith Baker a minute ago, but he's vanished again. And that's it. So that's all the housekeeping. So I'll go on to the main agenda itself, which is apologies for absence. The only one we've had is for Councillor Oliver Whittle, if my memory is correct. Is that correct, Callum?
That is correct, Chair, yes.
Okay. Are there any other apologies that we're aware of?
No, Chair.
Okay. Declarations for interest. Has anyone got any declarations for interest?
I do, Chair. Item 18, need to declare a judicial interest as director of a small business, and I've been advised to take no part in that item. So I'll leave the meeting.
Okay.
Chair, sorry, Chair. I have it. I don't know whether I have to declare this interest. Item number 17.
Yep.
Yeah, or 16. Or 16. I mean, because I'm a member.
16th member question. You mean the BME forum?
Yeah.
Yep.
So do I have to declare? I'm not sure if I do, but just let you know that I'm a member of the BME forum.
I think that would be enough. Callum, confirm it for me.
I suggest there's no real benefit of that you could gain from this item, so I suggest that you declare a personal interest, but I wouldn't say it would be prejudicial. We're not scrutinising the BME forum as such. We're sort of looking into ways that the council can work better with it and understand it better. So I'd suggest you just declare a personal interest, Abdul.
Okay, then. Is that okay with you, Chairman? Personal
That's
interest,
fine.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Paul, with your declaration of interest, for ease of use, Clive, might I suggest that once we finish item 18, you text Paul if he wants to come back? Probably going to be the quickest method.
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you.
I won't be far away.
I didn't think so, but it just to make things easier rather than having myself or Callum pull up a message from Teams or something like that. Okay, moving on. Public question time. Was any public questions submitted, Callum?
None submitted, Chair.
Okay, members' questions. Have we got any members?
Again, none submitted, Chair.
Okay, so we move on to the full part of the agenda then, which is the BME forum update. So who's taking this? Is it Ramnik? Are you taking this, or other officers? Who's speaking?
I think.
Okay, well, fire away, everyone.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity to provide an update around the work of the BME Forum. Hopefully, you should have received both the report on this and the additional information that we circulated afterwards to provide some more detail around some of that work. To provide an overview of what the Forum has done since its inception nearly 20 years ago, it was established to be an independent forum of the council, meaning that whilst the council administers the forum and provides the administrative support to the forum and provides the forum with information, the actual direction of the forum itself is guided by the forum members. Its primary purpose has been acting as a critical friend to the council. So on information that the forum receives, it can provide advice, it can provide insight into those services that are being discussed or presented. And almost as a counterpoint to that, it also has a very effective role as being a way of celebrating the different cultures and histories and experiences that we have within the borough. Those two particular sort of activities and purposes are manifested through the BME Forum meetings that are held 4 times a year and the Black History Month celebrations that happen in October each year. And specifically around Black History Month, the Black History Month, as it's often understood, certainly in America, is around Black history, Black African American history, whereas the BME Forum in Woking has always been clear that Black History Month is a celebration of all Black and minority ethnic cultures in the borough. The primary value of the BME Forum, as I understand it, is that it creates a dialogue between the BME community and specifically some of those main organisations that operate or serve residents in the borough and the council around issues that are of particular importance to those communities and to those residents who sort of speak through those community organisations. And that means that we've been able to support and grow an understanding around a wide range of different issues that are important to the BME community. And in some of the information that we sent you, certainly in the addendum, I think we provided a list of, over the last 3 years, all the issues that the BME Forum had addressed. And in that, you'll see that there's things around health. There are things around different bits of council activity, primarily things around burial grounds and things like that. And those are the sort of things that help create that and maintain that dialogue and that understanding. And those are the things that the BME communicated they want to explore. What I see as the value of that, and I'll be happy to interested to know that Ramley has views around this, and is that it really creates a confidence between the council and the BME community organisations, the BME community leaders, in being able to discuss difficult subjects at those times when we need to. So I think back to the sad time when we had, unfortunately, some terror arrests, a couple who were arrested on terrorism activities in the borough. And that provided an opportunity for the local police area commander to come and speak to the BME Forum and really in detail around how the police were handling that issue, in particular how the police were Hi, am I back? Around how the police were responding to the particular sort of sensitive community concerns of the families that were impacted by that. And then when we had the first virtual forum, a colleague from Public Health to come along and talk specifically around what is understood about the COVID impact on the BME community, ability to have those conversations about, say, difficult subjects that I think are the real value of what the forum brings to the council and the way in which the council can support what is important to the BME community. The Black History Month celebrations itself, then, just as the other part of that, and the bit where we can really show and celebrate different heritage, different cultures across the borough, is a really important and very active. Sorry, my daughter is shouting. A really important and active way that the community can come together and show a diverse range of cultural expressions. The events that are held in Woodley Baptist Church every year at the end of Black History Month are incredibly family focused. So there are performers from all ages. The event is always absolutely rammed in terms of attendance. And it's a real positive way of showing that the council is again supporting and want to listen to the different cultures and different experiences of residents from across the borough. That's kind of what to include in the report important to the BME Forum and Wokingham Borough. Thank you.
Thank you. Ramnik, you keep appearing on and off mute.
Yes, indeed, I did.
There you are.
I just wanted to say, I think that, thank you, Mark, for that summary. And that is a very fair reflection in terms of the partnership that we've had with Wokingham Borough Council for all these years. And I think it had, on the whole, worked very well. It provides, I think what the forum provides the council is so an insight into the cultural diversity that exists within Wokingham Borough Council. The danger, of course, is that if you start just paring down into the communities that you have, they are quite a mixture of communities, and there are only one or two major groups. And I think there is a whole number of smaller communities within that, sub-communities as it were. For example, if you were to look at the Asian communities within Wokingham Borough Council, the vast majority of them tend to be from the northern part of India. However, in the last 5 to 6 years, we've had people both from the northern part, which is the Gurkhas, for example, near Nepal and below Nepal from India. And then, of course, in the south, where you have people from southern India, which are Tamils. Now, the complication that arises, of course, is that within that composition, you have got groups of people who are in themselves culturally very diverse. In the same way, where we have the black minority, black group in communities within Wokingham, again, if you start looking at beyond just the front page, as it were, you find that there are communities which have come from different islands of the Caribbean. There are people who have come from parts of Africa, and we are in danger of grouping them all under black, whereas underneath it, they have got their own little subcultures, which are, of course, are unique to them. So what we can do, of course, as a forum is to sensitize you as a borough to say, well, hang on a minute, life is not as simple as you think it is, because within that conglomerate of communities, there are differences. And of course, each makes a contribution to the whole, as it were. So I think, having said that, we just trying to raise the profile and your understanding in terms of what we have within Wokingham Borough. And of course, Mark is absolutely right. I think we also have dialogue with the local police. We sometimes have the people come along if there are concerns that they have, if there's events that are taking place which might impact or reflect or cause concern within our cultural communities. For example, there was a spate 3 or 4 years ago of raids of Asian houses to steal the gold, because word was around that, you know, people from that part of India, northern India, do prefer to put their savings in gold and keep them in the house, rather than put them more safe, perhaps in the banking sector. And I think we were then advised that we just need to be aware and need to take steps to secure that. So that has been a part of working with other agencies within Wokingham Borough Council. I'll stop there for the moment.
Parry, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. I will. I think it's fair to say that I've been involved with the BME Forum now, right going back all those years, 18 odd years ago. I think Mark will remember going back that far as well. There's always been a councillor representation over the years to support the BME Forum, and that has been in the past, Bob Wyatt, who unfortunately is no longer with us, but he played a very active role within the BME Forum, and he was the vice chair for a number of years. And on his passing, I was privileged to actually step into that role. So I've worked with the chair and the Wokingham Borough Council to ensure that we are, the voices are heard, the concerns are taken on board, and if there are any policy changes within the council, we will try to address the issues through a change of policy. And there are, as Mark has mentioned, celebrations of Black History Month, but I think there are other cultures which we will also need to include, like, for instance, Diwali, which is a Hindu festival, Vaisakhi, which is a Sikh festival, and there's the Eid celebrations from the Muslim community, and we need to capture all those celebrations into the BME arena. And now we've got an arts and culture strategy in place, and I think that Mark has mentioned already the Black History Month, where all the communities from the Black minority ethnic communities take part and enjoy music from various circles, from the Afro-Caribbean, from the Indian, from the mainly of those two areas where there's dance and music enjoyed by the attendees. So that will add a great deal of richness to the arts and culture of Wokingham Borough going forward. And I think that's all I have to say, Chair.
Right. Thank you very much for that, everyone. That was actually very interesting, personally. Could I ask members who want to ask questions to indicate using their hand, and then I will go as the process. And I can see Clive putting his physical hand up, so I've got you there, Clive. Don't worry. So we'll go with ladies first. Shirley.
Thank you, Chair. Very interesting to learn about the BAME Forum, and I was very interested when I read the reports that came through with the agenda. And I think probably one observation I would make is that I think the forum has been hiding its light under a bushel all this time, because all this really good work is going on, but it's a little bit under the radar. And communication has been my thing. When I was working, communication was my thing. So I thought I'd have a quick look through the Borough News to see how many mentions the BAME Forum had received in the Borough News since. So I went back to 2011 when it started. And whilst I didn't go through every single issue, I have to say, I did look through all the winter ones to see whether there was a report on Black History Month, because I figured this is a big showcase event. It's something that the borough should be promoting and telling all residents about. And I couldn't find it. I couldn't find it mentioned in the Borough News. So I was quite sad to see that. So my question really would be, is the BAME Forum working with CEM to reflect the diversity and promote inclusivity within the borough through its various communication channels? And I feel that maybe there could be some work done there. And another small observation I made about the Borough News, and I think if we want to show that we're really reaching out and wanting to encourage involvement within the council's activities, and show that Wokingham is a council for all its residents, irrespective of colour, religion, etc. I looked at the covers of the 30 issues of the Borough News, and actually only 3 of those covers featured somebody who was BAME, 3 out of the 30. And it occurred to me that anyone who is BAME who is outside of the forum looking at the Borough News would maybe think that Wokingham Borough wasn't very inclusive. So I wondered whether the BAME Forum is going to be working to try and get some of its events and news included in the borough news. Sorry, that was long-winded, but I needed to get across the background. Thank you.
No worries.
Did you want a response to that, Shirley?
I think, sorry, it's Ramit. Yeah, go ahead.
You're absolutely right. Very true. I think if you looked at the borough news, I think we don't exist. It's sad to say. And I think the difficulty, of course, has been that we have been really at the behest of our representatives from the council. And they haven't acted as the ambassadors of the BAME movement, or BAME Forum, within the council itself. So therefore, all your council meetings, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if you thought that what BAME was, and the fact that it actually exists in Wokingham. So I absolutely agree with you. I think we need to raise the profile of the forum. I think it does some very good contributions to the life of the borough, and therefore we need to seek opportunity. We need to engage with the communication people. We need to engage with the media people within the borough so that we can raise the profile and of course attract a more wider representation from the borough. I'm very aware that over the years that we've been involved since 2011, 12, the membership of the forum itself has also waned. It's gone up and down. And the reason for that being, of course, you know, people, this is purely voluntary. We come in and we try to do good for the whole community. And sometimes it can be a big challenge. And despite making efforts to try and engage, if we don't get feedback, if we don't see anything actually happening, people then lose heart. And they say, well, why am I wasting my time here? I can spend my time more fulfilling myself somewhere else. So for that reason, I think we need the support, active support of the borough, by raising its profile, being interested in what the population, the coloured population in Wokingham Borough does, and so that we can then have a much more healthier representation, because it is in the interest of the borough. You know, if you want a more balanced response from what we think the borough should be doing, then the more representative we are, the more benefit will be for the council. So I think that's where we are. Unless, of course, Carrie wants to say something.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that if more BAME,
Chair, if I may come in.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Barry.
If I may, Chair. Yeah, I think Shirley and thank you for your comments, and Ramnik, thank you for yours. And I think that yes, we have been under the radar. There are things that that particularly related to the Black History Month. There's an exhibition that goes up in the foyer in the council offices. The actual celebrations. And I think there was one article where the previous chair of the BME Forum was actually, he appeared on the Borough News and talking about the forum itself. But overall, I think, yes, things have been under the radar, and we need to bring that out more into the open through activities, particularly now that the arts and culture strategy is in place, to actually focus on the arts and culture that the BAME community can offer as well. So going forward, I think now that the council leader, the chief executive is much more engaged with the BME Forum. And I think that can be a really good thing there for that to happen. And hopefully going forward, there will be a bigger exposure of the BME activities or BAME activities within the borough to show all the good things that happen within the communities within the borough.
I hope so, because I think the BAME Forum would then grow that would be the thing. It would, for the publicity would help it to grow.
And that's the whole point of what we've been trying to do here as well. Is this committee meeting itself is giving much more awareness and visibility about what the BAME Forum is doing, and that's the whole purpose about why we wanted the presentation to come forward. It also gives us a thing. I think you've got an action, Parry, of we need, and I think an article from the forum in the next Borough News would be a good idea. Ramnik, you may have semi-dropped yourself in it to help write it, maybe, but I think it is a very good idea, and that's the sort of thing that we can do in this committee, is basically poke the right people to get things moving in that right way.
I think, Chair, that's absolutely true. I can work with Keeley and Mark to make sure that the comms pick up that article in the next issue.
Thanks, Chair.
No worries. Shirley, did you have anything else?
No, I'll let somebody else have a go. I'll probably think of something else as we go along.
No worries. Keith, I had your hand up next after Shirley's. I do see you, Graham, by the way.
Keith, you're muted.
Hello, Keith. I think you might be having audio issues, Keith. Because I can see you're unmuted right now, but I've got no audio coming through at all. Okay, there's some issues. Keith's clearly got some issues his end. So, Paul, do you want to ask your questions quickly?
Thank you, Chair. I've got several questions. A comment, first of all, which was about the BME Forum meeting 4 times a year, and how's that communicated to everybody? I think I've got the answer on that. The reason I was going to ask it is I've got several friends and neighbours who are of the BME community. So I asked them the question about, did they know the BME Forum, if it existed or not? And all of them said they'd never even heard of it. One of them is very, very interested in joining and getting involved. So I can pass those details on to Mark, if you like, afterwards. On page 7, you talk about following the Black History Month. I was considering, maybe could you take that out to libraries around the borough in November by extending that, and maybe out to towns and parish council areas, so it gets a wider audience overall. Because if it's just stuck at Chute End, unless people are going there, they're not potentially going to see it. So it could be something, I think, which would be good for the future. On page 6, talks about the forum has also been proactive in delivering a healthy lifestyle project, and that ended in 2018. Why did that end in 2018? And was that specific funding for that project from the health service? Also in 2018, women's only swimming sessions were removed from leisure centres, something that affects Asian women. Why was that? Why was that stopped? The government have announced in the last few days more funding for healthy lifestyles. And is that something we could tap into to help the BME community? And also future programme of community response following COVID-19, and will CAB be involved? And if so, how? Thank you.
Shall I take some of those?
Yeah, just quickly though, Paul, did you mean to say CAB at the end there?
Well, those the community type groups.
I just wanted a clarity there, because we've got so many acronyms flying around at the moment.
Cool. In order, and I'll try and get all of these. Yes, the Black History Month exhibitions from the Mall Gallery have occasionally been displayed in libraries at different parts of the borough, and we have had some specific events. but having that with a bigger focus would certainly be a good idea. And so definitely we'll look at that for these year's activities. The Healthy Lifestyles project was funded through Partnership Development Fund from the Health Service, and initially it was for 3 years. We actually managed to eke that funding out for much longer than that, and sadly in 2018 was when the funding ran out and we weren't able to secure any more for that project. We would happily look at any opportunities for resurrecting that project if we could find some alternative sources of funding, so we'll certainly look into that as well. I'm not aware of why women's only swimming sessions were stopped in 2018. I would have to check with some of our leisure services colleagues around that. But the issue around COVID and community response, you may have seen at the forum meeting last week that we had the presentation from Public Health around understanding what actually the impact on BME communities was in terms of the COVID outbreak, because we have the national headlines, but unfortunately at this point we don't have local data to be able to be more accurate around that. And Mustafa from Public Health gave a good explanation of why that data isn't available at the moment, but some good news in the fact that it is now being collected in terms of when incidents are recorded or deaths are recorded, that ethnic heritage is included with that information, so we can get a richer picture of what is actually happening locally. But in terms of what we've been doing without that data, we've been in contact with around about 10 BAME organisations that support residents through the borough for a few months now, and every week asking them what are the issues that you're facing, anything of particular concern around the COVID outbreak, is something that you need help on. Perhaps unsurprisingly, a lot of the feedback we've had through that in terms of issues that people are concerned about are issues that anyone will be concerned about. People were concerned about their children and their well-being, being at home. They were concerned about their children returning to school. They were concerned about elderly relatives, those sorts of things. But there were some specific issues, I think, particularly in relation to faith activities. As we saw some of the easing of lockdown measures and we saw crowds in open spaces and parks, there was a frustration in the organisations we were contacting that those faith groups weren't allowed collective prayer or collective faith activities. And that was felt to be a real sort of frustration. But that work and that sort of regular contact is managed through the Voluntary and Community Response Group, which is chaired by the council, but involves lots of community organisations, including the Citizens Advice Bureau and the Volunteer Centre, in making sure that that intelligence gets passed into that system so we can understand it.
Right, thank you.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, just on Paul, on the CAB and things like that. We'll discuss it later in the work programme, but Matt Pope and his team will sort of leading the community response element, so I'll discuss it a bit more later, but there will be a briefing and then an item which will encompass sort of the voluntary sector as well, so that's they're definitely not being omitted from the review.
Thank you, Callum.
Anything else, Paul?
Nothing further from me, thank you.
Okay, Keith, do you want to try again?
I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. I got... Anyway, don't worry about it. Several things. I totally agree with Paul about parish and town councils' involvement. Maybe it's impossible to do it to all 18, but at least you've got 3 large town councils, 2 of which really have got large facilities to actually host any of those activities. So I really urge you to think about that. Also, another suggestion as well, picking up on Shirley, is when I was trying to research the BAME Forum or BME Forum, it was nigh on impossible to do a decent search on our website to find any reference really. And surely what we should have now is a dedicated web page to do with BME, which is publicized right at the top of the, when you log into the website. So if anybody wants to research or find out about BME activities with the council and the community, they can get there quickly rather than get frustrated and not find anything. I was very, very interested in, is it Ramik, his comments about some of the subcultures, etc., which was knowledge to me. And I just wonder, we only do the what you call it, the Wokingham News 4 times a year, I think it is, that we actually had dedicated 1 page each issue to actually educate residents, etc., about these cultures, because I think a lot of the issues that crop up is due to lack of education about not knowing about the cultures and the cultural way different parts, certainly of the Asian community, react. So there's some ideas, but I do have one serious question, and I fully endorse and think you're doing a great job about trying to publicize the cultural diversity of the BME or BAME environment or culture. But I think there's another side that this forum should be looking at, and I couldn't find it in any of the information that's provided. That doesn't necessarily mean it hasn't happened, but I'll collectively call it equalities of opportunity in the workplace. That is quite a critical, serious issue. It's not only nationwide, it's also, or national, it's also locally. And I would have thought the forum was in an ideal position to actually help councillors and the council, etc., to understand what are the deficiencies of for the BME communities to have equality of opportunity in the workplace. I'll leave that. That's really all I wanted to say. 3 ideas plus a question.
Chairman, shall I come in on those again?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yep. Firstly, Keith, thank you for the offer of space in Woodley Town Council for Black History. Look on that, if that's okay, that would be really, really good to do. And thank you for the other suggestions as well. The equality of opportunity is something that the forum has looked at in the past, but that is quite some time in the past, to be fair to say. We did provide information as best we had it on the diversity of council staff, particularly in terms of diversity of senior staff, so managers and up to the executive sort of level. I think now will be a good time to revisit that. So certainly if the forum wanted that information, we'll try and pull that together for it.
Can I just very quickly say thank you for that? I think the timing is spot on to revisit that whole area, and it's not just understanding what the percentages are, but it's understanding what blockages, if there are any, and I'm sure there are, to stop the progression of people from those communities into senior positions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Clive.
Yeah, thank you, Guy. You'll be pleased to know quite a few of my questions have been asked, so there's not going to be many from me. But
it's usually me that gets that.
Yeah, on page 7, so when there's been some terrorist activity, then the local police commander has attended the BME forum, which is obviously very, very good work. But do we know when that last happened? And after the incidents in the Forbury last month, is it something that should be happening again? I don't know if it is still being considered as a terrorist incident or not. So I might be a little bit behind, but maybe Mark has an answer. And then I entirely agree with what Parry was saying, that we should consider doing more to celebrate the different festivals. And is this something that Mark and other members of the BAME forum can come up with some ideas? So next year we managed to get a very full program, and maybe not just Black History Month. And finally, do we know what the attendees of the BAME forum think of us as councillors? Do we know if they think that we listen to them? Do they know if we understand what their needs are, what their aspirations are? And do they have confidence that councillors, and I do mean all councillors, not just those running the council, that all councillors have a good understanding of their needs? And is that something that we can actually try to find out over the next 3 to 6 months? Is that a conversation that Mark and some of his team can have? Thank you, Guy.
Chairman, if I'll come back on the first couple of points there, that's okay.
Sure.
So, Clive, you'll be pleased to hear that pretty regularly we have at least one visit a year from the local police area commander, for as far back as I can remember. So that was Sean Virtue for the last couple of years. And before that, it was Rob France, and then Christian Bunt before that. I just mentioned that particular visit after the terror incident because that was a particularly powerful sort of moment when the police could, I think at the time I was really struck by how sensitively that response was and how much they demonstrated their thoughts about the impact on the community, because the people that were arrested were known to some members of the forum, certainly their families were, and having that breadth and that understanding around the impact on the wider community, I thought was particularly well delivered at that time. And the police have been regular sort of supporters of the forum, and we're very grateful for that. Certainly we can look at a wider calendar of cultural celebrations or linked to particular faith elements throughout the year. That's something we can take back at the ranch and work up some options for. But I think I will leave it to the councillors who are actually on the forum to perhaps talk about how the forum is viewed by councillors or viewed on councillors.
Chair, if I may come in.
It's not how it's viewed by councillors, but how it is viewed by the non-councillors who attend the BAME forum.
Chair, if I may come in.
If you want to come in, and then I'd like to hear Ramnik if he's willing.
Well, I'm quite happy for Ramnik to go first, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Barry, you're speaking now.
Okay, Clive, I think you've touched a very sensitive nerve there in terms of do the councillors, well, from that angle, do the councillors, are they aware that there was a BME forum? And then certainly the BME forum members, are they aware that the rest of the councillors understand their needs? And I think we need to engage. We have had in the past from organisations a presentation at the full council, and I don't think there's any reason why a BME presentation to the full council can be made in the near future, virtually or non-virtually, as that may be the case, and to make the rest of the councils much more aware of what the BME is all about, and what their needs are, and are they being met, and are the policies changing or not. So yes, I think there is a need for that, and I think I'll speak to various people to make sure that if we can get a presentation about BME Forum at some of the coming full councils. I'll leave the rest to Ramneek now.
Well, thank you very much, Barry. Well, I think there is a sea change taking place within the Woking Borough Council. At the last BME Forum meeting, we had the privilege of having both the council leader and the chief executive participate and attend. And I think that is almost groundbreaking. We've never had any of the senior people in the council taking an interest in what the forum has been doing. So I'm hoping that this change is going to bear fruit for the forum in terms of both the work that it does, the enthusiasm that is there, and will hopefully invigorate and create some energy in wanting to work and help Woking Borough Council. I mean, but there are some real issues. Let's not be carried away. There are some real issues in terms of what Keith has highlighted. When we asked members of the forum, what sort of issues do you think you want to have discussed by the council? They talk about things like recruitment and fair treatment practices within the Woking Borough Council. They talk about health inequality. They don't understand why something which was so good and which engaged the minority ethnic communities suddenly was stopped. And I talk here about things like Zoomer classes and healthy eating and lifestyle. And of course, in terms of schools, I mean, what holds back children of minority ethnic forum communities? What support is available to them in terms of extra help to bring them up to the national standard? And I think at times we lose sight that there are some real deprivation that exists within communities, within the minority ethnic communities, which unfortunately then holds these children back. So these are all kinds of issues which are in the background, and I will certainly be very grateful for the focus that the leader and the council chief executive have shown, at least in the first meeting that I've had with them, that there will be some real change in the coming weeks, months and years. So I will leave it at that for the moment. So thank you.
Okay, so what you're really saying is that there isn't a feeling that we understand their needs and aspirations up until now, but you're hoping that because the leader and the CEO have attended the meetings, that things are going to change in the future.
I just want to share what I learned in the private sector. If the head of an organization moves in a particular direction, the whole organization then will follow that lead. And I think I can see that beginning to happen.
Mark, I can see you're indicating.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a little extra information around that. Two things, really. Firstly, there is the survey that the council is conducting itself at the moment around tackling racism matters, which is open until the end of August. It's been running, I think, and since middle of June, where we want to understand the views of residents of racism or issues that they're facing across the borough, which we will pull together results of that very quickly in September and then share with the BME Forum so we can co-produce a response to that survey. And also, there's already been a suggestion that we increase the frequency of the meetings of the BME Forum, possibly to 6 times a year. And I think that the last meeting is a good case in point that some of the issues that the forum wants to address aren't 10-minute items or 15-minute items. They're things that could easily take a whole meeting in of themselves to discuss. And that was certainly the case with the information around public health that we had last week and the impact of COVID. I think increasing the frequency of the meeting will increase, obviously, the opportunity to look at these issues in depth which I think will be important to the forum.
Thank you for that, Mark. Anything else, Clive?
No, thank you, Guy. Thank you very much.
Okay, Graham, you've been very patient.
Thank you, Chair. I echo all of the questions and comments that have been made by committee members, and I applaud the work that the organisation has been doing over the last 20 years. But the advantage of offline meetings is, or online meetings, I should say, is that you can then quickly do a little Google. And I wanted to check something out, which I'm now going to raise. And everything that I'm hearing so far is about the Black and Asian communities. But the demographics have changed slightly. And in my remit for children's services, and as I've been going around schools, of course, we've had a number of East Europeans come into the area. And sure enough, my Google search did tell me that, yes, those communities also could come under the BAME banner. And I wondered what observations the officers and so forth had on that. And, you know, do they see it as being part of this grouping? Is there a need? And what should we be doing? Because, you know, the nature of the demographics do change over the course of time. That's my question.
Who wants to take that then?
I can just respond, Graham, if I may. You're absolutely right. I think to be representative of the communities within Wokingham, we must have a wide participation of all the communities, and I'm very aware that we miss out substantial minorities within our community who have no voice. And I think we have to make an effort to try and engage with as many people as we can. And sometimes it's not for lack of trying, it's also that you have to be sensitive to the community that you're trying to reach in terms of explaining to them, for example, what we do. I look at, for example, the Chinese communities within our both Reading and Wokingham Borough, and we find very difficult to engage with Chinese people. And when I've tried to do that, they have no interest. The only interest they seem to have, I apologize if you know people who are otherwise, they only want to do is run their businesses, make money, and go to the casinos. I mean, I asked the guy, I said, well, are you not interested in? He said, no, we as Chinese people, we don't belong to any group. We don't go to church together. We don't go to the temple together. The only temple we have is money. We just want to make money, and we want to go and enjoy ourselves, and we enjoy ourselves by going to the casinos. So we have to be sensitive to that as well, to make sure that whatever offer we try to make in terms of attracting these people, that it is relevant to them, and then they can respond.
Chair,
If I can just come back on that a little, if I may, or does someone else want to go?
Let Parry go first, Graham, and then you come in, and then I'll go to Mark, because I can see he's indicating.
Thank you, Chair. I think I will echo Ramneek's concerns. We've had situations where we've tried to contact the various other communities, like the Polish community, the Romanians, and the we have tried, and but they do not want to engage. And as yet, the Afro-Caribbeans and the Asian communities do take a very active part, do play an active part. But we have tried. But I think maybe I'll sit down with Mark to see if we can find a different way of communicating with these communities to bring them on board.
Thank you, Barry. Graham, quickly.
Yes, I mean, I'm just concerned that I understand the comments about engaging with certain parts of the community, but one has seen on national news from time to time that immigration in certain areas is hidden by colour because they're white. But there are other ways to get in contact with these communities. And for example, I was at a school a couple of weeks ago. No, it must have been a few months ago. And I can't remember how many nationalities they had that the school was servicing, but it was 5 or 6. So they had parents coming in doing meals from their home countries and then sharing those with all of the other parents and so forth. And, maybe the community starts with the children. Certainly where I live up here in Wargrave, the community of Wargrave was formed on the tarmac of the infant school when the mums first meet. And there will be other ways of getting into those communities. The black community and the Asian community get a lot of press, and I'm now concerned about the minority of the minorities. That's the point that I'm wishing to register.
Thank you. Mark?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it's really to, in some ways, echo the point of Parry and Graham. We do want to find ways to reach all of our communities. And actually, the suggestion of the schools and the cultural events that they have, I think, is a good one. And I go to those events at my daughter's school. But I think just to give a little flavour about the engagement work that we do kind of outside of the borough. So the Indian Community Centre and the Pakistani Community Centre are both organisations that are based in Reading, but serve residents within Wokingham Borough. And similarly, there are Polish societies that are based in Reading as well that we could again reach out to. I think whilst we've got certainly a period of momentum at this point in time where we're creating more information, more publicity around what the BME Forum can do, it's a good time to reach out even further as well.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mark. Graham, do you have anything else?
No, I think the point is made, and thank you to those that have given the responses. And I hope that now we've got that point at a level of consciousness.
Okay, right. Thank you for that, Graham. Right, well, thankfully most of mine have been asked in terms of questions. I mean, I think this has been a very good exercise. I think this has been very interesting. Particularly around knowing about the arts and culture strategy and everything else. Regarding Black History Month, and this is just considering what we've had for the past 6 months in terms of engagement in meetings and art displays, etc., etc. What contingency plans have been put in place so that events can take place if we're in a situation where we can't actually physically go and see things, etc., etc., going forward? Have any contingency plans been put in place for that? Because I believe if we can't have the concert, for example, if we're under a different stage of the lockdown, as it were. So I'd like to know what contingencies have been thought about that, and is there anything the council needs to do to support that?
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the Mull Gallery exhibition that would run sort of throughout the year, throughout October, the Afro-Caribbean Society often lead in terms of the development of that, and certainly in terms of the themes. And they will shortly be putting some ideas to the forum around the themes for that exhibition for this year. That in of itself is relatively easy to communicate further because they are the images that we'd hang in the gallery. So we can do those virtually. We can put those up in those community locations which are either open now or will be by the time we're in Black History Month. So things like the libraries, like the towns and parish council offices, we can do that. And we're just currently giving some thought to how we could run an alternative taster and performance evening. I mean, certainly already in Reading, there was a virtual Windrush celebration that happened last month, I think it was. And so we could do something similar if it's going to be a case of showcasing certain talents and how we would bring that together. So that's certainly something that we're looking at doing at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mark. Yeah, I before I go down and ask if anyone else has got any, well, actually, I'll do that now. If anyone else has got any additional questions, please put your hand up now, or for Heather, hold your peace. In regards to next actions, then this is more a question for Ramnik, I think. You've already outlined some things that you would like the council to do and improve, such as communication, borough news, etc. Is there anything else that you want from us as a council that we can basically talk to the right people to basically get the wheels in motion? That's the final question I think I would like to ask in that regard.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you, Chair. I think we have only just begun to make a change. I only became chair last October, so I'm still learning and earning my wings. It'll be a little while before we can then crystallize in terms of what the way forward is, what we want to do with both our membership, how we want to support the council in terms of their needs, because there are needs that the council has in terms of advice they might want, so they might want to bounce ideas of the forum. So I think there's nothing that I would seek immediately, but if I could take a rain check, I will then be able to come back to you, perhaps at a future occasion, and be able to articulate what support and help we might need. But I think Mark serves us very well at the moment. He and his team are very supportive, and so our immediate needs are being met. However, let's see whether we can plan for the future, and with council's help, I think that's where we'll be. So nothing immediate.
That's great, Ramnik. Thanks very much. In that case, my brain is thinking February because we're approaching August, and that's about 6 months' time.
Okay. Thank you very much.
That's my initial. No worries, Ramnik. Shirley, I can see you're indicating.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just one thing that hasn't sort of come up, I think, during the conversations within the BAME forum. Does the topic of racism has that been discussed on a regular basis? Do the members of the forum talk about their experiences of racism? Because obviously that's that is a topic at the moment, a hot topic really, with the Black Lives Matter movement, and we want to be sure that the council is supporting our Black and BAME communities in that endeavour really to report racism and to stamp it out. And I just wondered whether it's something that does get regularly discussed in the forum, or whether it ought to be a topic for the agenda.
Perhaps Barry and Abdul might want to say something on those.
Well, certainly. Thank you, Shirley, for raising that. And we've had occasions in the past where the police have brought in statistics as to how many hate crimes have been reported and how are we doing within the borough. So it has been talked about, and where we wanted to address some of the issues related to stop and search, for instance, where people felt unfairly stopped, or they felt that they were unfairly stopped and searched. And so we do discuss them from time to time, and particularly if they become very topical, like, for instance, the terrorist attacks, which were quite evident some time ago. And but so it's on an ad hoc basis, but not regularly.
No. Okay, yeah, because I think it's important that that these issues are obviously addressed, as well as the cultural, the fun issues, if you like, the Black History Months and the celebrating the diversity. And it's important that we don't overlook some of the more serious issues that we have to face, sadly, in this country.
Oh yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And now the Black Lives Matter campaign, and we fully appreciate the principles behind that, and both the chief executive and the council leader have come out supporting that, and that was the main issue or main agenda item at the last BME forum. So it was very actively discussed, and I'm sure some of the future meetings as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. I think that basically covers it off. I think I'd like to, Mark, Ramnik, Perry, thanks very much for that. I think it was very useful. I think we need to basically have you guys come back in 6 months' time, which is going to be about February time, February, March, to basically update any further progress, things that still need to be improved, etc., and just keep at it, because I think I speak for everyone here. Is there are many more evangelists for what's going on here than and what the forum does and everything. Keith, I can see you're indicating.
Thank you, Guy. I was just going to say that there has been quite a few what I'll call relatively simple suggestions, being complex ones as well, but simple suggestions that if we could get Mark to investigate relatively quickly and find out and feed back to the committee to find out if they're non-starters, rather than have to wait until the next committee meeting.
I completely agree. I was going to get onto that in a second when I saw you indicating. But I mean, it's things like the borough news, aspects of improved communication, etc. Those are some of the things that should be able to. So, Mark, do you want to comment on that quickly?
Absolutely. Everything that's been suggested tonight, I have taken down, and I'm just about to go off on 2 weeks' leave. But when I get back, I will certainly do an update for the committee around all things that we can do, certainly including those that we can get on board quickly.
I don't think anyone's begrudging anyone annual leave at the moment, considering what's been going on.
Thank you, Chair.
But that is fine on that. So thank you very much for that, Mark, as I'm about to be attacked by a cat. Next, we're moving now on to the next item when I can find it again. So we're going to move on to the COVID-19 response. I can see Paul leaving. Ramnik, if you don't want to stay for the rest of the meeting, you're more than welcome to go and enjoy the rest of your evening. But this is also something that might be of interest to you, because the next item is the COVID-19 response, business and economy, emergency housing provision and operational housing update.
I'm very grateful, Chairman. I had a little bit of exposure when we had a BME forum meeting, so I'm going to pass on this one. I'll join you again next time. Thank you very much. No worries. Indeed.
Thank you very much, Ramnik. Have a very good evening.
Thank you.
Okay, so who's taking this one? Is it Nigel?
I think it is. Yes, it is me. Evening, everybody.
Thank you.
I don't know how you really want to do this. I'm conscious it's quite a sort of wide-ranging report, but there's sort of a lot of sort of very high-level information in there. Whether you want to do it as a separately from the economy first and then housing second, if that makes it easier for you.
I think that seems like a completely reasonable attempt, because although they intertwine, I think the housing element is very, very much more specific to local needs, whereas economy impacts local, county and country.
Okay, I'll just briefly summarise where we are in terms of the economic recovery side. As you may be aware, it's one of the key work streams that was identified as part of the COVID recovery plan from the council. And you'll see there's just the diagram that just shows the areas, the streams that we're looking at within that stream, the sort of various strands. And what I've just done basically within the report is just to give you a bit of background around the national and sub-regional context from public information that's out there at the moment, and just shows it as exactly as Guy said, how it sort of flows down from national through the local level. What I've also covered in here is a little bit of information we've started to get out now from Thames Valley Local Enterprise Partnership, their own survey, and also the surveys that we've been doing ourselves within Wokingham, to understand a bit more granular about how the impact on our own businesses. You will appreciate, though, this is very much a moving feast, and this is still very early days. for many businesses. And so, the key to this is going to be that ongoing dialogue we have with our businesses moving forward as we develop our plans. A lot of the stuff we've been doing has been very reactive. I mentioned there the business grants program that moved quite a lot of grants out the door and supported quite a lot of businesses. But again, that was very much a reactive approach. You'll also see in here sort of the work we've been doing around working with our retail and hospitality businesses, trying to move them forward as they reopen. And some of you I know are involved in some of the work that we've been doing with the town centres in Woodley, Wokingham and Twyford around helping and supporting those to reopen, and trying to get that dual measure of ensuring that we have the health and safety of the public and the shopkeepers in mind, as well as helping the business to support stuff. Would fair to say that actually part of this, the speed we've been having to move with government legislation coming out and government guidance is we haven't always been able to do the consultation we would normally want to do. And so a lot of the stuff has been tweaked as we've gone along, and is continuing to be tweaked, certainly in terms of things like the social distancing measures in Wokingham Town Centre. We're working on that as we speak about another phase of that. What I've also covered in here is some of the other issues that were raised by our businesses. Although you'll see from our own health check survey, the concerns that they had around current furloughed staff about the future of their business. But one of the other areas was very much around the isolation of their staff and the potential impact of mental health on their staff as well. And that's another strand that we're now developing out, working with colleagues across the council just to understand where we can potentially help, rather than just signposting. Is there something a bit wider? And the final thing I would say before I take any questions is there's a Berkshire Recovery Coordinating Group that works across all the 6 Berkshire authorities. And that's sort of beginning to put together a strategic recovery plan, of which obviously economic recovery is core of that. And out of that will flow more detailed plan for Wokingham itself. But what that does pick up is some of the key strands that we've identified, which is around that partnerships and dialogue and information support to our businesses. And you've seen in there, we're setting up a business task force led by our businesses themselves, just to try and help engage and help direct that strategy. It also includes a major area around skills and employment, recognizing we move through as furlough comes to an end. We expect a significant increase in terms of those people actually out of employment, seeking new skills, in particular amongst young people, and also again those that are less able to access that support and help. So one of the strands we're working on is how we deliver that, how local that is, how regional that is as well, is one of the key tasks to understand what sits the LEP, what sits in the local within Wokingham itself. And the other thing I would say is that one thing we've tried to focus on with talking to our businesses, and I know that the LEP has as well, is around some of the positives out of this. Some of the digital transformation, focus on climate emergency, how it links in with some of our other agendas. I'm not sure I was going to say much more. Happy to take questions on any of that part before perhaps we move on to the housing side.
Thank you for that, Nigel. Do those who want to ask questions indicate? I will say a comment, as we are on a digital medium. I will definitely say that the digital transformation has definitely rocketed up in the last 6 months. I would quite like an actual holiday, because I've been a little busy considering I work in that industry. I can see Keith indicating. I've seen Clive indicate. Anyone else? Okay, so Keith first, then I'll go to Clive, just because I saw his hand go up first.
Thank you, Guy. I'm not quite sure it's at this section or section 3. I think they're both related. And I wanted to just raise what I consider quite an absence in this report about the impact of COVID-19 on parish and town councils, particularly around the town councils, who the 3 town councils who have significant budgets.
Yep.
So I'll just give you an example of my own Woodley Town Council. We've lost £1 million in income. Now, parish councils are going to get nowhere near that, but we've lost that. Yep. And there's no sort of, so from a business perspective, we're not in a very good state. I think we'll be all right, but we're not in a very good state. And there's lots of good activity in here about dealing with businesses, even on section 3, talking about retail and hospitality, etc. But there is this big gap, and I'm sure Early, looking at Clive, I'm sure Early's got similar, maybe not to the same level, because they don't have the facilities we have, but they're in the same situation. Wokingham, I'm sure, is the same situation. So I think there's something that needs to be added to this sort of report, looking at least the 3 towns, not necessarily the other 15 parish councils. And just as an aside, on page 15, just to say, we have set up 3 very successful partnerships with local businesses in town and parish representatives in Woking Town Centre, Woodley and Twyford. I'm going to be parochial here. Woodley had that already, and you've added to that. It's a minor thing. Don't worry about it. The big thing is, you know me. It's that I think there needs to be a little more focus or added to the 3 towns.
Yeah. I having not been engaged in that side, and there may be other things happening within the council, which I'm happy to pick up, Keith, and certainly make sure it gets fed into the wider action plan as we move forward.
Can I just very quickly come back? Sorry, what I was looking, yes, and obviously we're talking to relevant people, or our town clerk is talking to the relevant people, and I'm sure Clive's town clerk is doing the same. It was more, I would personally like to see a second version of this document that recognises that issue, because on all the communications, all the documents, all the public things I ever see, it's never mentioned. You know, it's not so much can we get more done, it's more there needs to be a recognition out there, because at the end of the day, when suddenly, heaven forbid, but one of our 3 town councils goes bankrupt, people will say, well, hang on a minute, what were the borough council doing?
Just to respond, I'm more than happy. I think as I said, we're starting to put together the wider action plan for the recovery. And as I said, I'm more than happy to make sure that's included in that wider action plan at some point that this committee can obviously have a look at and review going forward.
Okay, Clive?
I think Keith makes a very good point there about town council budgets. The early town council budget is definitely affected from hall hire, and there is very, very little hall hire is happening in this current financial year yet. We might get some towards the end of the year, but I think people are still going to be very, very cautious, and it's going to be a big hit. I would make the point that Robert Jenrick did say that he was going to provide money to Tier 1 councils, which I think that included us as Wokingham Borough, and that he expected some of it to filter down to the lower tier authorities. But from the correspondence we've had with the executive member for finance, we're not expecting very much support. I don't know if Keith is expecting much more support. He's obviously been hit a lot harder than Early or probably Wokingham. So I would hope that there is some support coming his way. But for us in Early at the moment, we don't appear to be getting any. So I'll come on to some other questions if I can. If we look at page 10, then there is, does it say, business health check survey, where the response is relatively low. Now, I've got a little bit confused because it suggests that there are 80 responses, but on page 13 it suggests 159 out of about 2,000.
Yeah, there were 150. Sorry, Clive, just to clarify, the 159 responses, of which 80 had follow-up direct phone calls.
Right. Okay. So we got 159 responses altogether out of 2,000 people we contacted, businesses we contacted.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Just to extrapolate on that. Sorry to interrupt, Clive. Of those businesses, was that basically every business in the borough? Because because the reason why I say that is it says 2,000 businesses. We got people like Microsoft and Oracle as examples as businesses in the borough, and I don't think they'd respond.
No, and I think part of the issue that happened is that there are so many surveys out at the moment and out over the last few months. The Thames Valley Local Economic Partnership went out similar time, more widely across Berkshire, and I think had about a similar number of responses back. We also had an issue around our database, and this part of what the process has been is useful to try and pull together a more coherent database of all our businesses. But these are just where we have contact details for those businesses. So you're right, guys, it's not every single business, and certainly we didn't. We were looking mainly for the local ones rather than those more wider. We have other contacts through to the larger ones, such as Microsoft, Oracle, and whatever.
Do you have any feeling, Nigel, for why the response was pretty low? Sort of 7.5%.
I think there was.
Would you consider that to be good?
I don't consider it to be particularly good at all, no, Clive. But I think given that the information we also know from other authorities, they're getting similar level of responses back. Partly it's because their focus was on other things. I think there's partly an issue around the number of surveys going out, and I think there's also an issue which is quite which possibly is what we refer to in the report, is that the recognition of what Woking Borough Council could do for them, as where their focus is, how much support they can expect from Woking Borough Council, as opposed to automatically going for Business Growth Hub or going through the Chamber of Commerce or whatever. I think there's a little bit about understanding what our role is and maybe promoting our role a bit more about where we can support and where we can help.
Yeah, so most businesses actually don't think that we can do very much.
I didn't say that, Clive, actually. I didn't quite say that. I think there's a lack of understanding of what we can do. And I think certainly in the current climate, where the focus is very much on financial and support that side of it, the business grants obviously get a significant number of people applying for that. But probably after that, you're probably right. If we're not going to slash business rates, not going to cut car parking charges or whatever those sort of things are, then the interest probably wasn't there at the time.
Okay. Were the businesses that we contacted mainly retail, hospitality, and sort of entertainment?
The majority that came back to us, I mean, there was a reasonable mixture, but the majority were around the retail and hospitality, because I think their focus was very much on the support they needed to throw back up again. The contact we've had with some of the other businesses, again, as Guy mentioned, a lot of the digital companies obviously were operating and being very successful in some areas. So we didn't get as much response from those that didn't have current furloughed staff or weren't looking for support. So it's a bit of a mixture, really.
Okay. And was it the increase in the unemployment claimants? It's gone from 1,140 in March to 3,525, which is a pretty big increase. You got any thoughts as to why it's so high in Wokingham?
I don't know. It's certainly, number-wise, we're obviously a lot lower in terms of overall numbers, but I think you're right, Clive. The percentage across Berkshire, we have the highest percentage increase across Berkshire. At the moment, we haven't got into the understanding of exactly why that is, and whether we have specific business groups that are seeing a certain number of redundancies, and that's something we're working on at the moment through the LEP with their information to try and understand why it's higher in Wokingham and if that trend is continuing. I think one of our concerns we've got is obviously as furlough comes to an end, what situation will be in the next 2-3 months.
My feeling was that it may be because we've got a lot of people who work at the airport here, but then the next line down says that the industry is hardest hit in Wokingham. It's 12 12.7%, but it's 16.9 nationally, and that would be aviation and tourism.
Yeah.
And we must have a lot of people who work at the airport. Must have.
Yeah, I think the problem with all of this is the information. We're still playing. The information obviously comes through and takes a bit of time to come through, and that as information comes through and we analyse it, and working obviously regionally as well, the stuff coming through from the LEP, it's taking us time to understand exactly what's driving some of this. I think you're right, Clive. There's a difference between the businesses in the borough and the impact on people working elsewhere but living in the borough.
Yeah, and the LEP is doing its own business insight survey. Will we get to see a copy of that when it's available? Do you think you'll be able to send that to members of this committee?
More than happy to. I hope to have it for tonight, but they haven't sent it through as yet. But as soon as I get it, happy to share it with people. No problem.
Okay, and then you've got this working and business task force.
Yep.
I think that's a really good idea. So I think we should be noting that is a good idea. I had a conversation with Stuart Munro today, and it seems like you're getting some very good people to come along to that, and hopefully there'll be a few more councillors getting involved as well.
I still have your request, Clive. That's fine. Yeah, I think there's certainly the intention of that, as I mentioned, is to be a broad group led by businesses that has a range of businesses, some of the key ones, the largest ones in the borough, as well as some of those smaller startup businesses as well. Also including those key groups and organisations, so the Business Association, Woodley Townsend Manager, etc., Twyford Together, but also representatives from the Small Business Association, etc.
It is very important to be keeping these big businesses here, and to be identifying the businesses that are a decent size now, and in 10 years' time they're going to be very nice, large employers. And then the last thing that I'd just like to say, I think that we should record that the council's finance department, and maybe your department as well, Nigel, has done a very good job getting these grants out to local businesses, not just the £10,000 one and the £25,000 one, where we've got to nearly 82% of our businesses, but these ones where we had the discretionary grants, where we've given out just over £1 million to 190 local businesses. That would have helped an awful lot of people in this difficult time. So I think the officers should be commended for doing the work that they've done.
I'll pass that on. Thanks.
I second that. On the discretionary grant, the work that was put in place to do that was done very quickly and very well. It was very good. I mean, looking at some of the, Clive again has nicked after half of my questions, so that's always useful. So one aspect I did note that I did pick up on that Clive mentioned in regard to the claimant rate. Now, the last I checked, and this was some time ago, but the unemployment rate in Wokingham was like 2.2%, something crazily low like that. So it would make sense if there is a higher jump in claimants, because we were so low in terms of actual unemployment rate at the start. So that makes a lot of sense. The one aspect that I can see, because I see things like webinars have been done for businesses, etc. What support and what communication with the business forum in terms of ideas is being done for digital transformation? Because speaking from experience with the lockdown, one aspect that the most successful businesses I've seen have been those that basically adopted digital, adopted deliveries, etc., and completely renovated the way they've done business as a whole. They've been some of the most successful organizations to come out of it. Those that haven't been as agile have not been as fortunate. So what support is the team and the LEP and Business Forum, etc., doing to try and basically help people get to that level of digital transformation, as it were?
Probably on a one-to-one basis. That's through the discussions with the Business Growth Hub. So the Business Growth Hub employed significantly more people to do one-to-one conversations with individual businesses across a range of their needs and requirements. I have to be honest, I don't know the details about where we are in digital transformation from that side, but I'm more than happy to talk through with. I know it's a priority within from our point of view and with the LEP moving forward, but probably don't have any information for you in terms of what we've done to date. But you're right, Guy, it's a crucial area. And it's interesting when you look at the responses to our survey about how many of those now have a social media presence, how many now are working online. And I think that also that message about going forwards, they don't see themselves changing from that as well.
Yeah, indeed. And especially as I work in the industry, albeit in the security side of things, so I'm not directly involved with digital transformation itself. I'm basically the guy hiding behind the scenes, securing it all. My own workload went from about if normal in February was normal, it went from normal to about 4 times normal. I had several days for an entire month where I was starting at 7 o'clock and finishing at 10:30 in the evening, which is completely crazy. And as a prime example, actually, I've just seen that the Woodley and Early Arts Forum, Woodley and Early Arts Group, is sending me a note saying they've got a digital demonstration in the next few days or next week. So there's an example. I'll hold my next set of questions. Abdul.
Hi, Nigel.
Hey.
My question to you is, Workingham GVA has been projected to decline by 41% out of 382 local authority. Can you give us a little bit more detail? Why is that?
I can't, Abdul, to be perfectly honest with you. And that's information that's come out from the Thames Valley LEP that's sort of been put together by the Office of Budget Responsibility. It's not something we've investigated further at the moment. This information was fairly new when I put into this. And I think it's a bit more work we need to do to understand what that means for us, and why our gross value added is dropping more than others, when we're sort of being recognised as an area that potentially has the ability to come through the COVID crisis better than most. It does seem slightly at odds with what they're saying in that modelling that they put out. But certainly, I'm happy to sort of take that away and come back to you on that once we know a bit more about that.
That would be great. It is a bit concerning seeing 41% out of 382. It is really, really something to look into. Thank you, Nigel.
Anyone else? Okay, Clive, I'm going to ask one more and then I'll come back to you. Quick one. The discretionary grant that was given out to businesses, the 1.061 million to the 190, do you have any details, because I know it was aimed at small and micro businesses, what the average size of those businesses were in terms of people?
I don't, but I'm more than happy to find out and send that round.
That would be
myself. Yeah,
that would be very good to know, just because it would be very interesting to understand, because I know there's a very lot of small micro companies out there that really could do some help. Clive, go over to you again.
Okay, so on page 16 in the list at the top of the page, we have this option and advice to extend seating onto pavements, and have we objected to anybody wanting to do that? And if we have, how was it received?
We have objected to one, as far as I'm aware, out of all the requests we had, and that was purely because it was basically would take up the whole of the pavement area. Was actually received okay. We did talk to the hospitality business about other options they may have, and I think they probably expected that to be a no from us. I think it was again the discussion around if we can try and keep the 2 metre social distancing, it just won't work on the area immediately outside their pub.
Right, and a lot of retailers have got their arrows on the floor directing people up and down different aisles. Probably not aware, but they disappeared in Asda. And,
did they?
Yeah.
Clive,
I noticed yesterday.
Clive, did you ever go shopping in Asda whilst they were in there?
I did. I know that people were not respecting them.
I think that's being polite.
Maybe that is an understatement. But now they've gone. They have completely gone. And I know that we have been encouraging shops to, certainly big supermarkets, to have distancing marshals or whatever you want to call them. But again, Asda, they have them. I haven't seen them have one conversation with anybody, and I think they probably should have done.
It's fair to say that PPP, Public Protection Partnership, are still getting regular. I'm not talking about Asda at all on this, but regular contact from people sort of reporting in concerns around social distancing and lack of measures, and they will follow up and will go out and inspect and talk to businesses. And that wasn't aimed at Asda at all. That was just a general comment about what PPP are doing.
Yeah. And then the last paragraph on that section before it goes to Part B says, we hope to cover the cost of all communication materials needed for the reallocation of road space through funding of the reopening of High Street Fund and that sort of stuff. So Woking and Borough Council have only received approximately half of its expected allocation from the Department for Transport. So, do you know what sort of?
Yeah, I think that was out of the first phase. The first phase. There's a second call for bids that's just putting in now. I think for the early August to put the bid in for that. So in terms of covering the cost that we spent so far, between the half that we received, I think it's 60 or 70,000, something like that, and what we hope will be the 150,000 or so we can receive for the reopening the High Streets Fund, it will cover our costs to date, and we hope in the second phase of the DFT money, we'll be able to cover any future changes to the road allocation stuff.
So we're hoping to get it.
We're hoping to cover our costs. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks very much. Thank you. Thank you, Guy.
No worries. Clive took another one of mine. I think on the social distancing aspect, I do think that some of humanity is a wonderfully chaotic species sometimes, and the supermarket trolley test is a very, very good social experiment. I suggest people read up on that at some point. But in regards to setting up, I'm glad to see that we've only had one aspect where we couldn't sit outside. I know I've got relatives in the United States who have been very much going, what is this sitting outside? This is a very European and Asian attitude to eating. What is this? Yes, it is something caused because we don't have that much air conditioning in most of Europe and parts of Asia. But I'm glad to hear it's only been one. And I think that's basically it. Does anyone else have any other questions on this, or shall we move on to Part B, which is the housing bit? Oh, someone went off. Shirley.
Just a quickie, talking about the sitting outside aspect. I've had a couple of residents writing to me asking why the council is giving licenses to cafes to have people sitting outside and then allowing everybody to smoke. So it means that in the past you could sit inside if you didn't want to smoke because smoking wasn't allowed inside, and now more people are being forced to sit outside. And I've said to them, well, I think that that would be very difficult for the council to control.
Yeah, that's actually a very grey area.
Yeah.
Legally, our licence doesn't allow us to stop people smoking on seating areas that are external ones that we've given those licences to. So we are working with the businesses to try and encourage them to encourage their customers not to smoke. But we have looked into it, Shirley, because it's a couple of other people have raised it with us as well. And it seems a little bit of a loophole that we can't control that within those new areas, those new seating areas.
Yeah, it's unfortunate really, because if a family go out and sit outside somewhere and then they happen to even if the table is distance, the smoke drifts across when you're eating, and it's not funny. But yeah, I just was interested to know what had come up on that. Thank you.
Anything else, Shirley?
No, that's all. Thanks.
Okay, I believe we're then Well, thanks for that one, Nigel. I think it will be useful to see how this progresses as time goes on. So let's go on to the housing element.
Okay, the housing thing, I've sort of covered a couple of key things. The emergency housing provision, rough sleepers, and a little bit about the operational housing. Part of what we obviously set up quite early on throughout the pandemic was a group just looking at all that requirements of emergency accommodation across the directorates. And you appreciate that as we were moving this forward, situations changed, and this was very much a moving feast. Looking at that sort of list there in terms of those people we're looking at the time to potentially provide housing for. And again, looking at the worst case scenarios, that picked up not just rough sleepers, but also early release prisoners, when there was discussions about a big number of a cohort of early release prisoners coming out, repatriation of overseas citizens, as well as hospital discharges, etc. So working with colleagues across the council, there was a sort of a group set up that looked very much at all potential emergency provisions, put in place those options available. Luckily, as things turned out, we were able to provide accommodation for most, or the need didn't materialise. And our focus was very much moved in on those homeless households, and also some new care providers coming into the borough to provide additional support in our care homes. So we did take on 13 additional properties from our registered provider partners, and also reached agreement with a couple of hotels, one of which we used around emergency overnight accommodation. And that is still in place if needed going forward. Probably the more interesting one would be the rough sleeper side. I'm not sure how much members are aware, but the Everybody In approach that was announced by MHCLG on the 26th of March required us to find permanent accommodation for rough sleepers. And within 48 hours, we rehoused all our rough sleepers into temporary accommodation. Going forward, that's continued, that focus on supporting our rough sleepers. At the moment, we have 28 rough sleepers in emergency or temporary accommodation, and that again varied between about 25 and 35 over the last few weeks. And those are a mixture of those who are sleeping rough in shared sleeping sites or at imminent risk of sleeping rough. So there's a mixture coming through our doors, or coming through to us for support. Of those, we've got 14 currently in WBC or housing company accommodation, and 14 in the private provision elsewhere. Most of those, in fact, all of those are receiving housing pathway support, so actually regular contacts, welfare calls, just to understand and help them through a personal housing plan, but also picking up other needs as and when are identified. So that may include food parcels or medicines. And they're still getting that regular contact and welfare calls from members of the team. So far, 13 others have moved into settled accommodation, and we've lost contact with 4 over the period. Those 4 may have just moved on to somewhere else, or whatever it might have been. With certainly aren't aware that any particular drop through the net, or haven't found an alternative accommodation elsewhere. There are 2 rough sleepers in the borough that we are in contact with who are not taking up the offer of accommodation. Continue to work with them and make contact with them. And that leads on to sort of what's being launched this week, which is the Housing First a scheme delivered by 2 Saints, which is very much an outreach work to try and work with those rough sleepers. Basically, it tries to move people into accommodation first, and then providing the additional support and services following on behind that. And that actually starts on Thursday. So their first target will be to work with those 2 rough sleepers to see what we can do to support them. As you'd also imagine, many of those, or several of those rough sleepers in emergency accommodation have additional needs, potentially around alcohol, drug abuse, etc., etc. And so working very much across a number of agencies to provide that support. And we have set up a homelessness coordination cell within the borough, which has all representatives from all departments, as well as public health, NHS, community safety, etc., etc. And that works sort of in tandem with the Homelessness Forum, which is the voluntary sector forum. We also have opportunities coming through from more funding coming through, which is we're just in the process of putting bids together, again from MHCLG, which has opportunities potentially for a rough sleeper coordinator in the borough, has some opportunities to provide additional drug and alcohol rehab as well. And so we're looking through what we're able to bid for working in that. And then the final section just includes operational housing, and that's very much from both the council housing, but also the housing companies as well. Our focus has been very much on those elderly and vulnerable residents, and you'll see there that we contact 850 of our general needs residents, and we're over 65, and carried out individual assessments with them, and are still continuing to keep up to date with some of those who felt they need extra support. But the focus has also been on those in our shelters and fosters our care home, trying to make sure they have a daily contact where needed. If we haven't put in place the I'm OK electronic check system as well. Finally, on this, I just would say that the all the necessary compliance and health and safety checks have continued across all our housing stock. Day-to-day repairs was put on hold. That's now getting back up into gear. We appreciate there was a backlog on this, and this will take some time to clear through. Similarly, we're now starting to our letting services back up and running as well. And the final thing is rental income. We are building into our business plans for both the HRA and also for the housing companies an increase in potential rent arrears. At the moment, we're not seeing much change in that, but we expect to see that starting to move over the next couple of months. But we also have in place all the usual support and advice to our customers around financial support. And that's probably a quick overview, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Nigel. Put your hand up, guys, if you okay. Who went first? I will go with ladies first again. Shirley.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Interesting report, and I've heard one or two bits of this report previously on the TLIP panel. And I really wanted to congratulate particularly the team that have been dealing with the rough sleepers, because they've done a fantastic job throughout this. And I think all of us, 10 years ago, if someone had said to us, "Oh, Wokingham will need a rough sleeping strategy," we would have probably, fell about laughing. Because it shouldn't be the case that we have one, but it's great that it's happening. Is this going to continue? Will there be funding to keep this up, to keep this going now? Because the last thing I think we want is for the funding to disappear and suddenly rough sleepers are appearing back on the streets and undoing all the good work that's done.
I think the Rough Sleepers initiative that was obviously pre-pandemic that was launched, which is where the Two Saints Housing First approach has come from, or the Housing First approach, and bringing in the Two Saints as our partner, was already there and was already a priority from the government and through to us as well. So that's a relatively longer term project. And I think it's interesting as you start seeing the other bids coming through as well for MHCLG. They're focusing on the current issues, but actually also trying to look forward and put in place these different type of models that will allow us to be more agile with rough sleepers. People move people in. Housing First is all about finding accommodation, then finding support, rather than the usual thing having to go through thousands of different barriers to be able to get into that. I think what's also done is also build up those relationships far better across all those other departments and services externally to provide a more coordinated response. Recognizing that a lot of rough sleepers do have mental health issues, do have drug and alcohol problems, there are issues around domestic abuse. And the intention from our point of view is to continue that coordination cell to pull those different groups together so we can have a look on a strategic level, but also able to go into the individuals as well and work on those individuals. And those housing pathway approach. So each individual has a housing pathway that may involve several different departments having an input into this. Whereas before it was working, but it probably wasn't as coordinated as it should be. So my hope is that this has given us a good kick to actually do it in a more coordinated way. And certainly the funding seems to be there for the next 2 or 3 years at least, Shirley.
Well, that's brilliant. Yeah, I definitely think the holistic approach is the way forward on this. So thank you.
Abdul.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Nigel again.
Hi.
First of all, congratulations in very short time what you have achieved, and thank you for your report, which is very clearly understandable. However, 35 rough sleepers, 13 additional property lease, 7 care home workers. I mean, roughly, what sort of cost you came about in this sort of, time? Because I know it's maybe far too much than what we think.
Yeah, the current cost per night for additional accommodation is around £750 per night. In terms of that, this will be claimable through the government's. We'll put it on our list to claim back from the government as part of our COVID approach, our approach to COVID. But certainly from that, it's around 750, and in terms of those additional accommodation we've procured, it's more potentially around not being able to use them for other reasons. So the work we've got with the RPs is very much done on a cost basis. So the income that we're getting in from rental is covering the cost that we're leasing them from the RPs, from the housing associations. And those care providers within the housing company, again, the housing company are paying for that. The care providers are paying for that, so it's not costing the council anything. So it's just those additional accommodation in the private sector for rough sleepers, and that's being picked up through the government's putting a claim directly to the government, directly linked to COVID.
Right, and my other question is, how much grant did we have for the rough sleepers or homeless?
So you keep asking me the question I don't know the answer to, Abdul, off the top of my head, I'm afraid. I have to admit, I can't tell you. I will find out and come back to you. I apologise about that. I can't. I will find that out and let you know. I can't tell you off the top of my head, I'm afraid.
No problem. Thank you, Nigel.
Okay, Clive.
Thank you, Guy. The number of rough sleepers, Nigel, at 35 sounds actually very high to me. I can remember having a discussion with when we were having the leaders group discussions back in March and April about rough sleepers, and asking how many there were and what provision we'd made for them. And I'm sure that we were told that it was a number of around about 12, yeah. and that they were all inside, they were all being looked after. When we returned to it several weeks later, there was one person who just did not want to stay undercover, but the number hadn't gone up. So this is quite a surprise to see this number of 35. And is this because of COVID-19?
I think it's probably fair to say that it has probably had an impact. And I think what we're trying to do is analyse the reasons behind some of these numbers coming through from the personal housing plans. But I would also say this also includes quite a significant number who are at imminent risk of sleeping rough, as well as people who are sofa surfing as well. So it picks up that wider group. And I think certainly the sofa surfers in particular, are those that potentially lost their accommodation because of COVID, because of the concerns around sharing households and social distancing. So there is a little bit of that in that concern coming forward. So true rough sleepers, it is a smaller proportion of that. However, it is larger than it probably was when we started sort of back in the early days, certainly in September or so last year when we did the rough sleeper count.
Yeah, and us helping them and getting them all into accommodation, which is great. I assume that that's had some impact on accommodation that we're able to offer to other residents.
And I think that's part of the discussion around where Housing First sits. And I think we're just reviewing the allocations policy at the moment. And that's going to be crucial to understand how we balance those coming through the homelessness rough sleeping route with those with other housing needs as well. It does take up a proportion, and will take up a portion of that priority housing. And certainly it's been fine during the current process because we haven't been doing normal lettings. But as we move out and letting starts again, we're just trying to work through the allocations to understand how we can balance that a bit more appropriately. But that's always the challenge of Housing First. If we're trying to meet those needs immediately, it does have a knock-on impact on others on the waiting list.
Okay, and then we're expecting to have an increase in evictions after the 23rd of August, when landlords are allowed to evict people. So what sort of provision are we making to be able to cope with that?
Well, two things. Obviously, we're gearing up to make sure we're giving the support and advice to both to tenants and to landlords themselves. And obviously, our first priority is always to try and secure that accommodation and maintain that accommodation. With the homelessness sale and also the homelessness reduction team are working just to make sure we have in reserve a number of properties dotted around that are available, both in our stock but also in the private sector as well. And certainly looking at the private rented sector, where we don't actually use that as much as we could do. And I think there's a bit of work being done there now just to understand what options we've got to around securing accommodation in the private rented sector that will allow us to meet the needs of that potentially larger cohort coming out. It's difficult until it comes to it. What we don't tend to hear is about people that are that know this is going to happen until they get the eviction notice through the letterbox. But the team does is gearing up as much as it can to be ready for when that happens.
Because it could be that a landlord who has got several houses is thinking, well, I can get people out of my houses and I can get them sold before there's a downturn in the property market if I act quickly at the end of August, beginning of September. So,
potentially, I mean, yes, it is possible. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Nigel. Thank you, Guy.
No worries. Thank you, Clive. Expanding on one point that Clive made as he stole off my question again, what support are we doing for are there any indications that if there is there going to be a big increase in evictions after the 23rd of August, or is there any data we've got to basically prepare ourselves, or is it just trying to guess how long a piece of string is?
I think it's a bit not a bit more technical than that, Guy, but I think I think you're right. We are basing it on the fact that we know that that's when suspension eviction stops. Therefore, we expect a number to come through, but we don't have any particular intelligence around how many that's likely to be at the moment. But obviously, as we move into this, move towards that date, we'll expect to start getting that information coming through as tenants get a bit more discussions with their landlords.
Okay, because I can never. It's been, oh God, I can't even remember how long it's been since I've rented. 2014, I bought my house, my first house. So I honestly can't remember what the minimum is. It still a month is the usual contract notice period?
Likely be 2 months in some cases. So okay, that's again, as you're more than aware, landlords may operate different ways. Different landlords operate in different ways. But I think that's our first point of contact would always go back to the landlords and discussing the option of maintaining that. And what we may want to do is look again at our options ourselves, having a private leasing process ourselves, maybe moving forward, working with these landlords to provide some guaranteed income. All those options are there as potential options as we move forward.
Okay, and it's the 23rd of August and we're now at the 27th, so we are a month. There would be more than a month. Have we had any notices from panicked people yet?
I am not aware that we have. I'm certainly talking to David Higgins, who's running this. He hasn't mentioned this as a particular concern, but again, I will happy to find that out and confirm back to the committee.
I think that would be useful. Abdul, are you indicating again?
So sorry, Cheng, that's okay.
Okay, right. Shirley, I can see your hands just shut up as well.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just on the subject of evictions, presumably the council, should it so wish, could evict people after the 23rd of August as well. Are we going to be doing that, or are we going to be holding fire and be treating people a little bit more sympathetically because of the situation?
I can't comment for the housing revenue account, the council housing. If I stick my housing company's hat on, I think from our point of view, we're not looking to evict unless, as always, unless it comes to the final point where we have to. Having said that, it's balancing, as you know, with the loss of income and the likelihood of never getting that income back. But the support we have in place around the financial support and the advice and everything else, and the debt support management stuff, tends to mean that we do very few evictions in Wokingham. But as you'd appreciate, over the last few months, some rent arrears have significantly increased in some for some of those
Yeah.
that already have vending pieces. And there comes a point where there may be no other option from the council's point of view. But I can't speak from the housing revenue and Simon's team at the moment, Simon Price's team.
I think that's a question we need to ask when we have Simon here at some point. So I'm certain he's going to be coming here with the budget at some point in the near future. So something we can ask him on that regard. But it's a very good point, Shirley.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to say on this item? Because I think it's been. I think speaking in general, this has actually been an example of personally how we should have done it, as it were. I've got no real comments to add that aspects of need to improve. I think we've done everything right in that regard. Is there anything you wish to say closing on this, Nigel, as I'm seeing no more hands? And Clive, you might want to text Paul.
I don't think there's much more to say. I think I would just follow on what I think some people say is, from personally in terms of the team, certainly the David Higgins and the rough sleeping team, the emergency accommodation team, have done a brilliant job balancing this and stepping up to the plate. But I think I'll also stress again that this is, we're still early days of a lot of this stuff, and certainly on the economic side of it, it's going to require quite a joint working across all of the council departments and councils as well as we move out of the pandemic and into the recovery phase. But thank you.
You're welcome, Nigel. I think this is going to be an item that we need to just keep an eye on, and it's going to be part of our whole COVID response thing. But I think what has been done has been appropriate, and I think it's been the right calls to be made. And the fact that we are learning from it and taking the basically housing first and then support later, and then aligning in the support later is definitely the right way to go for the rough sleeping strategy. So we need to keep doing that going forward. But thank you very much, Nigel. This has been very useful.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Welcome back, Paul.
Thank you.
We're basically moving on to the final item for tonight, if my memory is correct, which is basically the upcoming meeting work plan. And I believe I think I actually get to hand over to Callum for a bit.
Yes, happy to, Guy. Yep. So I've got quite a few updates in addition to what you've got on your papers. But if we deal with just the very brief stuff on the papers first. So 2nd of September, which is an ordinary meeting, which will be a rarity, as you'll find out going forward. We've had to move one of the COVID items because of staff annual leave. So we had a space, a gap in the agenda pop up, and the problem is there might be the suggestion, why don't we just cancel this meeting? Well, we've got so much work coming up that this road repairs item will unfortunately get lost in amongst the rest of the meetings. So the suggestion, I had a chat with Guy the other week, and he suggested that we could put a brief report together about virtual meetings, and also this would be a good time for us, Democratic Services I'm talking about here, to be able to talk to the committee a little bit more about the possibility of hybrid meetings in the future. So it would all tie in quite nicely, and then we could have that as a sort of a supplementary item to the road repairs item which Keith previously suggested. So I just first of all wanted just to check that the committee was happy with that suggestion, and that there's no, if I don't see any hands, I'm assuming.
Yeah, put your hand up if you've got any comments to make on that on the 2nd of September meeting. I can see Keith's hand has shot up. Am I surprised with road repairs?
Keith?
Okay, thanks. Actually, it's not about road repairs.
My God.
The virtual meeting.
Yep.
I don't have a problem with that, and I think it will be helpful. My concern is that could very easily drift into the whole problem of timing of full council meeting, because without shadow of doubt, it now being a virtual meeting does contribute to the issue, but I don't think it's significant. And I just don't want us to get into a potential bun fight where, you know, we're meant to be talking about the concept of a virtual meeting, and we spend all the time talking about, well, you know, we've got 7 motions, we didn't get to it, blah, 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 blah. Over to you, Guy.
Well, in that regard, I wasn't actually going to be touching timings at all in this concept. It was very much around technology, the aspects about what we're talking about, the ability between different people in the room, people outside the room, what committees are appropriate for hybrid and virtual meetings going forward, etc. The capacity on whether or not meetings should be broadcast, even if they are physical meetings, so we're all back in the room, as it were, and live streaming, etc. That was the aspect I am thinking about, because one area that I've had criticism from members of the public has been, yeah, it's all well and good, we have these great bits of technology here, but for the viewer viewing it, it's rather clunky. And Callum, please do correct me, but I believe you're still streaming this meeting using your OBS system.
Yep, I've got a little bit more support now from our friends over at IT, but yes, that's the essence of it. When physical meeting wise and hybrid meeting wise, there is functionality within David Hicks and the council chamber. We haven't used it yet, and we are talking with the suppliers about sort of more functionality. But yes.
Can I come back, please, Guy, very quickly? Yep. Yeah, I understand why it's in there. I totally agree. I think it needs to be spelt out in the agenda and to all committee members that we're not talking about the timing issue, and it needs to be hammered home on that one. And I think also we should invite the chairman of the Constitutional Review Working Group to be at least an observer at that meeting, even possibly a participant, but at least an observer, so they can see where our thinking is, because anything we come up with ultimately, generally, will go to the CRWG.
That is a very good idea, Keith, in that regard. Very good idea, because also one aspect that needs to be considered with this as well is the legality of it, because this probably will need legislation from Parliament, so it's an aspect of something we can report back to any discussions that Parliament will be having as well on this, because constitutionally, from our point of view, because we suspended the standing orders, as it were, none of these meetings, is my understanding, would actually count as us being in attendance, in inverted commas. So it's aspects like that as well that is a whole different ballgame on top of what we were trying to discuss here. But does anyone else have any comments on this, as it was very much a virtual suggestion? Yes, I made that pun on purpose.
Okay, if there's no more comments, we'll have that sort of as read for the meeting on the 2nd. So if we move on to the next page, I've now got a date for this meeting. It all ties in with budget scrutiny and things like that. So the date I've got for this, for all of your diaries, is the 22nd of September, which is a Tuesday. It's a very busy week. It's squished between health overview and scrutiny and audit and executive, so there isn't much wriggle room. So I'm hoping we can get at least a decent committee representation, or if not, some substitutes for the 22nd. So looking at this, if you scrap the MTFP from that, and I will update you on that very shortly as to why that's being scrapped, but community response, we will have that will be Matt Pope attending for that one, and we should be able to get the property investment portfolio. I've already spoken to the team there. On COVID, the other update relating to this is me, Guy and Oliver had a chat with Matt and Charles Margetts about this. So we thought it would be beneficial to have a sort of a pre-committee meeting as such, but not a committee, so a briefing on the 20th of August, which is the sort of best date for Matt and the team, fitting around leave and things like that. So that's a Thursday. at around 6 p.m. So it wouldn't be a committee meeting. It would be a briefing. There'll be a PowerPoint presentation and etc. from Matt and the team. So it will be sort of looking at the community response. It will be looking at work with our sort of voluntary partners, Age UK, etc. Things like sort of what staff thought of the work, sort of what worked, what didn't, getting the view of the staff, the voluntary sector. So I will obviously send all of these dates round to you, but we're looking at the 20th of August for an informal briefing where we can develop some key lines of inquiry, and then we will then move on to an actual public-facing, as of this evening, committee questions on the 22nd. So I'm now, unless there's any burning questions about that, I think that's Keith's hand up from previously, but maybe not. No, it's gone. Oh, it's back. Oh, it's gone. Okay, all right, I'm going to assume it's gone. Where, if I can share...
No.
Oh, no, it's not gone.
Just a quickie on the COVID, particularly the community response to the pandemic.
Yep.
I think it would be helpful that it doesn't become totally Wokingham centric. So there were very strong community responses in Woodley, in Hurst, I think it was, in Whitegates, in Early, and talking to them, you'll find a different picture than talking to the CAB. So I think it's important that we don't make it too Wokingham centric. I'm sure, certainly, I'm trying to think. Oh, Matt has those contacts in those community support operations. He's got the contacts, and so he could get somebody invited.
Yep, that's a brilliant idea from an officer point of view. I'm assuming Guy is all for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely no objection. I wouldn't want it just to be a Wokingham specific. I want it to be the whole borough.
Yep. So I'll let Matt and Charles know about that, and I'll get them to make contact and include that in both the briefing and the report. I was in the midst of trying to share this. There we are. Right. It should be appearing on your screen.
It's now up.
Yep. Okay. So me and Guy have had a meeting with Graham Ebers and John Kaiser about looking at budget scrutiny and getting dates in the diary and letting this just creates a timetable for officers to work with. So these are the dates we've drawn up. There's not, again, a lot of wriggle room with these. Reason being, it all ties in with the specific dates and when the lockdowns come out for the different versions of the revenue and the capital papers, etc. So we're looking here at the first meeting that members will need to come to will be the night before the first committee, which will be on the 12th of October, which will just be a private briefing to sort of focus on key lines of inquiry before we then crack on with the actual review as we did last year. Dates we're looking at, it follows a very similar programme to last year, as those of you that were on the committee last year will recognise. So first meeting is going to be sort of an overall strategic look at where we are and sort of looking at where there are holes, where there aren't holes, and sort of what the plan is regarding that. Then we move on to the specifics, as we did last year. I know the committee appreciated the detailed bid sheets. Once again, those I'm very hopeful they will be provided. So
if they don't, I'm going to have an argument with someone.
Indeed. So 28th of October is when we crack on with the care services, so to speak, so children's and adults. Graham, as with last year, you'll need to declare an interest with those specific meetings. 23rd of November is when we're going to try and look at the 3 non-care directorates. If we don't get all of those done in there is some wriggle room on the 22nd of December to have a look at those as well, because that's when we're looking at special items, and we'll start to look at capital. And then we finish off in January with capital, sort of more stuff, and then the final revenue discussions. And then, as with last year, I'll draft a report and share it with you all, which we aim to get to Budget Council on the for February. So again, all of these dates will be sent round to members, put in diaries and things like that. Are there any concerns or comments with what we have here proposed?
And just one additional thing on this, I have already. Basically, we need to stop having emergency meetings, and next year for the calendar, I will be asking that the committee's number of regular meetings is increased to deal with the workload. I'm getting sick of being known as Mr. Extraordinary Meeting. And it will basically be aligned along these similar times here going forward. So meeting multiple meetings in October, November, December, January, as it were. So focus on the more meetings in that period in a shorter time frame.
I'm not seeing any hands go up. I appreciate this is a. I'll stop sharing this for the moment. I appreciate this is a lot to take in, and it's a lot of meetings and work for members. So obviously, as I say, I'll draw this out in black and white so everyone knows what's expected of them. As with last year, it's going to be a very big project for all involved with the budget scrutiny side of things, and then tying this all in sort of earlier in the day with the COVID community response as well. So it's going to be a busy few months. And Shirley, I see a hand up, and Clive, I see you as well.
Yes, thank you, Callum. Just going back to the COVID-19 community response, I was involved in a group in Whitegates, and there was a guy called Philip Cook from Involved Community, who was someone who was overseeing all the local groups, and he made contact, and we had meetings with him, and I know that the Woodley group did, and so he might be a good contact for giving that overview that we were talking about.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, if you could
I'll
ask,
email
shall
I email his address to you?
Yeah, if he's happy for his details to be shared, then yes, please do, and I can then share that with the officers.
Right. Okay.
Clive, I believe.
Yeah, thank you, Callum. So I tried to note down those dates, and I think I got most of them. So it would help if you can send them to us. But,
they'll be said.
Yeah. What was the meeting before? Usually about 7 days before.
No, that's the dispatch of agenda.
Ah, fine.
That's what it was standing for.
We didn't do that last year.
No, yes. It took me a moment to work out what that was as well, Clive. But then I remembered the actual meeting in the haze of the end of the fiscal year from work last week. Dispatch. It means a dispatch.
Yeah, I know we all need a holiday now. I certainly do.
I'm going to the Isle of Wight on the 4th of September, so I get a meeting and then I go on holiday.
Lovely place. I used to live there.
Ooh. Keith.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on Shirley's suggestion. I caution about getting that guy involved. I know him well, Philip Cook, and the problem is he's an overseer, and whilst there were issues that got raised up, the chances are, nice stomach, guy.
The cat just decided to walk behind the camera.
So the chances are he won't know of some of the operational difficulties. So he's one level removed. He's closer than Matt, but he's still one level removed. It's just something to think about. I'm not necessarily putting forward one of our Woodley admin to be the potential spokesman, but we could get one from any of the other areas, just to really understand at the coalface what happened, not who was organising it, not who was overseeing it, etc.
Yeah, no, that's fine by me. It was the fact that he funnily enough, had sent an email today kind of trying to round things up and see where people were at. And he just popped into my mind as the conversation was unfolding. But I have no strong feelings one way or the other.
Okay.
I think, Guy, that's looking at my notes. I think that's all my updates. I know there's a lot of info there, but it will obviously be shared with members. Yeah, but that's me done. Unless any members. Oh no, it's not. I tell a lie. The task and finish group that we were going to set up on.
Oh Lord,
cycling, green travel.
About that.
Yes.
With everything that's been going on at work.
So I did drop an email out. I've had a couple of people come back, but we do still need a couple more people on it. If we can't get membership from community and corporate, we can open it up to the wider Scrutiny members as well. I did originally suggest a 2-1-1 split, but we can also have a 3-1-1 split, for example. So I don't know what the committee's thoughts are on membership of this. I know Keith's already come back and says that he unfortunately he's busy, so I know that's somebody that we won't be getting on this particular task and finish group. Paul?
Thank you, Callum. I can't remember if I put my name forward or not. It was a while ago. I did. Oh, that's all right then. Thank you.
Guy, what are your thoughts on extending this if we can't get the required membership
It might be worth if no one else can, because I'd need to. The problem I've got at the moment is the fact that come October, November, my schedule goes completely out of the window for a good period of time due to the arrival of my second daughter at some point during that period. So I don't know what my schedule is going to be like. So it may need to go out if we haven't had any further volunteers from the committee by... Is it Monday today? It's yes. Monday. By next Monday, I think. And then
congratulations, Guy.
Thank you.
2 daughters are lovely.
Yes. My grandfather would completely agree. So he had 2 daughters. Both of them did, actually, now I think about it. But yeah, it is. If we can't get any members of the committee to volunteer, and I think the 2-1-1 split is the appropriate one to do, then we may need to go out to the other elements of the committee. I mean, I may have capacity. It all depends.
Okay, well, it's something that can be. This isn't just for you. This is for all members. It's something that can be conducted virtually. So obviously that does give flexibility in terms of sort of timings, and anyone that's been on Neil's climate emergency task and finish group will be able to sort of say that it's been better in terms of just being able to maybe pop on for an hour or so at a time that some people might not previously have been able to do. So I will resend the email out to committee members, and we'll see what sort of response we get back, and if not, then I can then send it out to the wider sort of Scrutiny membership. Yeah.
That seems reasonable to me personally. Neil, I see your hands have suddenly appeared.
Good evening, everybody. Can I just work back from because all the scrutiny committees are carrying out this review of COVID-19, and the aim is to take a final report to executive in November.
Yep.
So that means in order to write the report, we probably need to have quite a bit of the information feedback from the committees ready by mid-October. So in terms of the work that you've set yourselves on the committee, you just may want to think about the time frame in terms of getting your heads around all the issues and coming up with some ideas.
Yeah, I think that's one of the aspects that when we were discussing this, Neil, that we basically wanted the briefing in August and then the meeting straight away in September, as it were, on that aspect, and then it's basically moving on. And effectively, it's going to have to be an organic, evolving document when it goes back to management. Will it go back to management before it hits executive?
Yes, that's the plan.
Yeah. So basically, it will be an evolving document, and the process will be effectively giving the report back to management from myself as a member of that committee, etc., going forward and presenting it back to them, depending on circumstances. Unfortunately, due to other circumstances, I missed management last week. So yeah, that's basically. But yeah, we will get it ready in time for November.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone for anything else? Speak now and forever hold your peace. Okay, if that's the case, no. If that's the case, then I think we can close the meeting at 21:28. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Have a very good rest of your evening, and Callum, once again, thanks very much for broadcasting this for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Guy.
Good
Thank
night.
you, Callum and Neil.
Night.
Night, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Good night.